Hello and welcome to World Talks here on TVP World. I'm your host, Diana Skaya. The European Union is ramping up support for Ukraine, approving a 90 billion euro loan package and advancing a new sanctions round against Russia. With Kyiv seeking fast access to funds for defense and arms production, the moves carry major strategic weight. And all this as EU leaders are discussing it all in Cyprus. Joining me now is Milan Lelich, political analyst at RBC Ukraine. Milan, thanks for being with us here on World Talks here on TVP World. Milan, EU leaders are announcing new funding, sanctions, and steps towards Ukraine accession to Europe. Let's listen in for a moment to Antonio Costa, the president of the European Council.
Strengthening Ukraine forces and their capacity to continue the fight to defend from Russian invasion. The second step, to increase our pressure on Russia, to push Russia to accept seriously and to engage seriously in the peace negotiations. Now it's time to look forward and to prepare the next step. And the next step is to open the first cluster of negotiations for the Ukrainian accession to the European Union.
All right, Milan, so the president of the European Council, they're naming quite some important, referring to important points there. The first thing I want to ask you is, Milan, what is the current state of Ukraine's budget? And I mean, how awaited by Kyiv was this 90 billion euro loan?
It is basically absolutely crucial for our financial stability. There are different assessments, but according to major ones, it is said that maybe without this loan, we will not be able even to make it till the end of this year. So from what I know is that due to a lot of troubles and challenges in this process of delivering this 90 billion loan, some plan B, plan C actions were discussed, were debated. Some may be temporary measures because both in Kyiv and in many European capitals, our friends understood that without this money, we'll will not be able to wage the war and just keep functioning till the end of the year. So our resources without this credit may be off in several months or something, maybe even earlier. So this is really crucial for us. And now with this money basically here, we know that some technical procedures are needed, but in several weeks, perhaps maybe in a month, the first tranches of this money will be in our possession, which means that we cover approximately 2/3 of our needs, both for this and the following year. So it's a huge step, really a huge one.
So Milan, what exactly are those needs? Do fill us in. What is Ukraine planning to do with the money?
Well, these 90 billion, according to the plan, they will be split into two uneven parts. So the first one is 60 billion. They will go for cover our military needs in all spheres, both the development of our military industry, purchasing of what we need abroad in Europe and everywhere. And the second part, the 30 billion, they will improve our microfinancial stability. So they will be used for salaries in the civilian sector, basically for running of our economy. So both these parts are really crucial, and from what I heard, about 30 billion of this, so 1/3 of the sum of this loan, they will be spent on military needs as soon as this year, because we have to make ourselves more and more independent, given the United States policy, and that we are not very much sure that the U.S. any sorts of U.S. assistance will flow as smoothly as it has flown by now, given the situation in the Iran, in Middle East, and elsewhere. So this money was really very much awaited, as you asked.
All right, Milan. So let me ask you again. I'm only playing devil's advocate. I'm not. It's just a normal question that also many would want to know. I mean, Ukraine has had its share of scandals, right? In the past few months. So let me ask you this: with such a huge amount of money on the table now, right? 90 billion euros, and you just laid it out. What safeguards are in place or are going to be in place in Ukraine to make sure that the funds are actually spent effectively and transparently?
Well, being a Ukrainian, I really have to admit that we do still have corruption here. And for everyone knows it, everyone who follows Ukrainian news knows about larger and smaller scandals here and there. But fortunately, there has never been any scandal about stealing $1 or a cent or a euro from Western aid provided to Ukraine for these 4+ years. Luckily for us, our officials and everyone who is in charge, who deals with this money, they managed not to steal a euro from that sum. So all these corruption scandals, only like internal Ukrainian money is involved, which is obviously very bad, and it's a huge blow for our image, for our credibility. Everyone admits this here, but we managed to, together with the European Union, earlier with the United States, we managed to build these procedures, these safeguards, and the flow of money is really very well controlled. The path of each and every dollar or euro from the moment it enters, like it becomes Ukrainian, that we start dealing with this money, to the moment that it's something is bought or wherever it is spent. So and again, for you to understand, and basically for everyone to understand, these 90 billion, it doesn't mean that we have, I don't know, like enormous sum of cash brought here to Kyiv, $90 billion. I don't know how much space will it take, and then some officials will start, like grabbing this money. No, it doesn't work this way. Everything is very transparent. Everything is audited by a lot of Western institutions. We have inspectors here by different international agencies. So I'm sure that everything with this particular huge sum of money, 90 billion euros, this huge sum of money, that everything will be okay, and every cent of this money will be spent as it should be spent.
You did mention earlier on, correct me if I'm wrong, that 60 billion, right, you say is going to go to the military, to Ukraine's military industry, and the rest you did mention on covering civilian salaries and so on. But let me ask you, do you think the funds are going to be sufficient for Ukraine? Let's be honest here, Russia to this very day keeps bombing Ukraine, day in, day out. What about, civilian infrastructure, civil service costs, expenditures related to the functioning of the state, and all of this? Do you think that it's actually going to be enough, sufficient to be able to cover all these humanitarian costs?
No, everyone knows that even such a big sum of money will not be enough to cover everything, obviously. So, as I said, it's assessed that more or less approximately 2/3 of our needs will be covered in all the spheres for this, and next year will be covered by this particular loan. But also this loan, it opens the path for us to get money from other creditors, from like individual states, international financial institutions, so on. So all together, I'm sure that we'll manage to cover all our expenses for 2026, 2027, and maybe even on, because as of now, unfortunately, I cannot see any signs that Russian aggression will stop this year or maybe like next year. As of now, no signals, so everyone should prepare that still Ukraine will have to be helped a lot still. But this really solves not all, but a huge chunk of our troubles in all the spheres, in paying salaries, in buying military equipment, in developing our own military technology complex, which is really one of the maybe best in Europe as of now, but still it needs more and more money. So our economy is really earning a lot. So we are not 100% dependent on Western aid, but still without this Western aid, we will not be able to function just because Russia has really made such a great damage to our infrastructure of all sorts. And as of now, we are very actively preparing for the next winter. There are a lot of plans all around the country that together, the central government, together with the local officials, they keep preparing, because the last winter was maybe the hardest one for us here in Ukraine over the course of the full-scale war, because Russia has really managed to destroy a huge part of our energy infrastructure. The weather was very cold, so we had to pass through very, very difficult weeks here in Kyiv. For example, I experienced it on my own. So in order for this not to repeat, we started our preparations as soon as like a couple of months ago for the next winter. So with this sum of money, I'm sure that we will more or less manage, more or less.
And I believe we also have yet to see if President Zelensky will actually have a meeting with President Putin in the near future. Thank you so much, Milan Lelich, for being our guest here on TVP World. And that's all for this edition of World Talks here on TVP World. I'm Skaya. Thanks for watching.